Germany was left starving after the First World War. They were broken, defeated, and torn apart. Nobody wanted to be friends with them until Hitler arrived and won their hearts over at the expense of the Jews. Let's deep dive into the price for power between the $1 Jews and the $40 billion Nazi German machine. The global humiliation of all Germans from the Allied powers was incomplete. Months followed them all to this huge gathering called the Paris Peace Conference. At that time, the fate of the Germans rested in these four powerful men at the time: US President Wilson, UK Prime Minister George, French Prime Minister Clemenceau, and Italian Prime Minister Orlando, aka the gatekeepers of generational wealth. These four Santa Claus rejects zigzagged their Harry Potter wands, called the Treaty of Versailles, casted a hex on Germans, and wrapped them in stitches. Before long, the Germans gave up the most prized-possessed territories, lost their hood privileges as a colonizer, banned from having advanced ammo, submarines, and Black Air Force Ones, and owed their ops $30 billion in damages caused after the war. Yet, the Weimar Republic, the German government at the time, decided to print more money to cover them. Genius. Unfortunately, they ran out of toner, and their cash lost value because it got friend-zoned by the gold standard. On one hand, the price of food was so high that aliens needed to sell Area 51 to Tony Stark to cover up each German family. Damn, this pile of cash was enough to keep Pepper's long legs warm near a bonfire during White Christmas. On the other hand, the German Jews developed survivor immunity from the broke nigger alert because they held revered positions in society, such as lawyers, doctors, engineers, and school teachers, the majority of Germans. Then, the Weimar Republic suffered an excruciating anxiety attack after they threw their old currency away and held a new one above their shoulders, like Rafiki and Simba from Pride Rock, called the Rittenmark. Soon after, Germany's economy soloed their ICU bed, recovered from their pole dancing experience with the Titanic, and took the Treaty of Versailles V-card away. On that premise, AD found the Nazi Party, signed to Universal German Prison Music Studio on a 360 deal, released Mein Kampf as a mega-hit debut album, and stormed the Billboard charts diabolically. Germany's glory days were short-lived. After Wall Street blindsided our ancestors into the Great Depression, Germany, once a wonder kid on the streets, turned into a hag beneath the sheets. AD almost gave up, but his undying fidelity to Germans kept his durag above his head fastened like Princess Diana's seatbelt. The Nazis gained immense support from Germans, but desired universal appeal, despite his strong opinions on social democrats, communists, and the Jews. So he recruited Goebbels as the head of the Nazis' propaganda, and their party grew from 200,000 to nearly 2 million supporters in a space of 3 years. Eventually, the Germans casted more votes for the Nazis than any other political party throughout Germany, 3 years after Humpty Dumpty fell off of Wall Street. However, it failed to reach the popular majority vote, so the German national government formed a squad of leaders called a coalition inside this enormous building, the Reichstag, in Berlin, where decisions about the country's future was made on behalf of civilians. Yet AD viciously intended on getting rid of democracy without pissing off the German president at the time, von Hindenburg, the man he found tremendously intimidating. Before long, AD kindly asked him to be drafted as the #1 pick for German counselor. Shockingly, von Hindenburg stood on business and denied AD's requests. Sadly, his ops ran him down near an alley and threatened to manhandle his little resignation from this planet if he didn't. Von Hindenburg reversed this decision and made AD the Chancellor of Germany.
Damals gelobte ich mir zum ersten Mal, als unbekannter Einzelner diesen Krieg zu beginnen und mich zu ruhen, bis endlich diese Erscheinung aus dem deutschen Leben beseitigt sein würde.
But AD AD took hating to another level and permanently grazed von Hindenburg inside the death note he stole from the Jews. Dreadfully, lung cancer took von Hindenburg out of commission before AD unlocked his Haikai key and unleashed havoc inside the studio. Man released the sophomore album called The Enabling Act, which broke first week global record sales. Its top Billboard charting turned AD into a prehistoric sniper rifle and the Nazis into Lucifer's lapdog. Within 1 year, AD relegated the German coalition to Elon's self-driving toilet seat, illegally deported trade unions into the afterlife, benched the Jews from the starting lineup of the Super Bowl against the failed nationwide boycott from their shops, and extradited the Treaty of Versailles into past tense. If Piccolo time traveled to the 1930s with Bulma, AD and the Aryans, aka the German Sabrina Carpenters, would have racially abused him as justification of their jealousy towards his fit. After long, Goebbels juiced up the Nazi propaganda for a PSA from AD. Their pull-up game was insane. AD's predatory speaking skills gripped people's attention with both palms of his hands.
Aber das Volk kann Ihnen ja nicht nachfolgen. Das Volk ist ja gekettet an seinen Boden, ist ja gekettet an seine Heimat, ist ja gebunden an die Lebensmöglichkeiten seines Staates.
Mandem gassed them up with job opportunities, affordable food, healthcare, education, and greatness for them all, at the expense of the Jews. So the Germans burned books, built new roads, bridges, buildings, railways, vehicles, advanced weapons, and vacant positions in their military. It was in this mess of atrocities that the Nazis changed history forever with one gesture. AD was inspired by this gesture as his tool for control, power, authority over Germany that he made all his Glazers and civilians do it as allegiance to the Nazi party. Their fear of consequence was difficult to be hidden from the outside world. As a result, AD was no longer a mere human being. He was larger than life. One time, one of his Glazers went, "Damn, how are we paying for all this, bro?" AD went, "Don't worry, we'll lower the taxes so that people could spend their cash how they saw fit." Psych, stupid. Them taxes doubled from the first day of his rule. He was again asked, "Bro, how are we gonna pay for all this?" AD went, "We'll take every resource the Jews owned and fund our economic growth with it." Man was not joking, and released his third #1 hit studio album called The Nuremberg Laws, which permanently scratched the Jews off the German citizenship list. They were no longer able to put food on the table for their families, even dabble with nobodies, nor even vote for anyone in power. Jewish males and females were classified as Israel and Sarah. Every Jewish family was worth under $1 after the Nazis sealed their assets. AD's Glazers, for the third time, asked him, "Bro, this ain't enough to cover all public services." AD manifested the spirit of Kanye West and done lost his damn mind. "Nigga, shut your Kool-Aid flappy ass up. I brought you out of scapegoat poverty, and I was sure as hell throw you back there if you taste my patient, Jimmy Neutron head ass boy. If the assets we seize from the Jews ain't enough, then we lower all prices so that it's easy to buy food, build this country, and prepare them all for war." Thus, Nazi Germany achieved their goals. They had more civilians with jobs than any other European country since the Great Depression, and restored both their economy and military. On the other hand, the Nazis blamed their $40 million debt and their incompetence to the Jews, who lost trust for many Europeans due to the commanding Nazi propaganda. I secretly believe that this man's personal morning hair grooming and skincare routine and teeth flossing was behind their gigantic debt. I could see it now. AD on some, "Get ready with me as we embark on the day in the life of a competitive anti-Semitic fraud." Eventually, AD initiated his plan for global domination through the invasion of Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, the declaration of war on Europe with their allies, and mandatory classroom attendance for all Jews to a meet and greet with Mufasa alongside the Poles, the Romes, and the Lion GTBTQ community in Auschwitz, commanded by SS Supreme Leader Heinrich Himmler, through an oxygen diet, autograph signatures on their bodies with bullets, and intermittent fasting with David Goggins. At his peak, AD seemed indestructible after he had conquered Europe and gained loyalty from the Aryans. The more bodies the Nazis caught during World War II, the more diabolical they became altogether. In total, AD and the Axis powers were responsible for the gruesome casualties of approximately 60 million people, including over 10 million from the extermination camps. Even though the Nazis' momentum grew, their wallets tapped out from a rear naked choke. That's why the Nazi underboss, Rudolf Hess, stole a plane from Nazis' military's air force, crashed his landing into enemy territory in Scotland, and snitched on AD before he was replaced by Goering. Even so, the Nazis' plan for global domination was blown wide open. Bro flew himself across Europe like he was about to slay the reindeers. Thing is, the Allied powers backtracked and witnessed the Nazis selling up their souls to the Soviets. Still, Stalin deep froze his territory after he realized that the Nazi regime's survivor immunity was spawn blasted by the cold, brutal Soviet winter. Goebbels knew he was next if he never fixed the propaganda mess and the cash they have lost from the Soviets. So he fed the Aryans with lies out of fear from being cooped by their ops. His plan backfired after the US and Japan ran the craziest fades on each other. This backed AD into a narrow corner until he declared war on the US too. These blunders from AD had converged Mussolini, his right-hand men, and his wife into hanging corpses, cosplaying runway models in front of all his ops. This had thinly spread the Nazi regime and the Axis powers territory from the Allied powers. Their troops ran out of ammo, and nearly all of them bargained for retirement from mass starvation. Overall, armed troops from the Allied powers circled around Nazi Germany and encroached Berlin aggressively. This put AD under immense pressure. Bro's face looked like what happened when Andrew Tate's air tank had put lotion on him. As a result of Nazi Germany's tragic downfall, Hess was putted behind bars for life. Himmler betrayed AD, got fired, retreated near Allied territory, got caught by British armed troops, and snuffed himself out. Goering booked his first-class ticket to a diplomatic peace talk with Scar the night before his death sentence. Goebbels king-wronged his kids, his wife, and himself before the Allied powers closed in. AD had enough of the Nazi self-destruction, so him and his wife eloped into the afterlife. Long story short, the Nazi regime surrendered to the Allied powers, and World War II wrapped itself up. See, trading a global war for power and control never worked out for Nazi Germany. Had AD not burned bridges with his allies, the Jews, and the Treaty of Versailles, then history would have turned out differently. But his ego couldn't take a tremendous hit and costed him millions of lives and billions of dollars, gone forever. Yet his impact echoed across generations. The truth is that we isolate ourselves from our loved ones on this flawed belief of sabotaging ourselves for feeling undeserving of their time, attention, and energy. Instead, we must continue to grow with discipline and unconditional love to create something more meaningful for ourselves instead of hurting each other. I am the Morty, and this is goodbye.